Let the talks begin to end the blockade of Qatar. The Emir welcomes Turkey's president, who says direct dialogue is the only way to solve the Gulf crisis. So, will the call be heeded? This is Inside Story. Welcome to the program. I'm Richelle, Carey. First, it was milk sent from Turkey to keep supermarket shelves in Qatar well stocked. Then troops from Turkey flew in to reinforce their military base in Qatar. And now Turkey's president has joined the diplomatic offensive to try and end the worst Gulf crisis in decades. Recep Tayyip Erdogan visited Doha on the final stop of his two-day mission following talks in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. Turkey's leader is putting the onus on the Saudis to end this diplomatic isolation of Qatar. He says direct talks are the only way to end the crisis, but the blockade, that must end first. Osama bin Javed reports.
He's proven his friendship to Qatar during the Gulf crisis. The Qatari capital, Doha, is the third and final stop in the Turkish president's shuttle diplomacy around the region. Beyond diplomacy and politics, Turkey's deep business interests are also at stake. The Turkish government is standing behind Doha and rejecting the demands set by blockading nations.
The most appropriate way is to sit together around the table and direct talks. This is the main obstacle, in front of the settlement. I hope there will be an opportunity for such format meeting.
Having backed one side of the conflict, Erdogan had his work cut out for him to diffuse tensions. He chose to meet the Saudi king and crown prince first on his tour. The visit to Riyadh was meant to remind the Saudis of Turkey's economic and religious ties with all Arab countries. Saudi state media says the two sides discussed efforts to combat terrorism and its sources of funding. Erdogan then flew to Kuwait to meet the emir, who is leading mediation efforts. Turkey supports the Kuwaiti efforts, which are also backed by the US, Britain, France and other international allies. Qatar's measured response is thought by some to have helped contain the crisis.
The Qataris were able to say, we're not involved in this, and that's the proof, and they went ahead and signed a major document with the USA, and the USA gave a clean bill.
A conference on freedom of expression is underway in Qatar, which is hosting representatives from more than 200 international rights groups and media organizations.
The monarchies of the Gulf, the Egyptian military dictatorship, want to prevent Al Jazeera from broadcasting their people's concerns to the people of the region. They want to prevent the Muslim Brotherhood, which represents a vision of Islamic governance, not from the top down, but from the bottom up through the ballot box. Those are scary propositions if you're a monarchy or a dictatorship.
The conference is backing efforts to promote and protect freedom of expression. There's also recognition of the responsibility of a free media, especially during the Gulf crisis, when some media has also been used as a tool to advance political agendas and spread false news. Osama bin Javed, Al Jazeera, Doha.
Joining us on the panel today from London, we have Enes Bayrakli, professor at the Turkish-German University in Istanbul. In Madrid, we are joined by Qatar's ambassador to Spain, His Excellency Mohammed Jaham Abdulaziz al-Kuwari. And finally, here in Doha, we have Abdulaziz al-Horr, CEO at the Qatar Finance and Business Academy. Welcome to all of you. Thank you very much. Enes, I want to start with you. Is Turkey in a position to have an impact on this crisis?
I think, yes, Turkey does have a certain impact because Turkey have really good relations with Qatar in the first place, but at the same time, Turkey has also good relations with Saudi Arabia and also some other Gulf nations. So I think this visit also shows that Turkish diplomats were also involved beforehand, before the visit, to try to negotiate and try to mediate between the parties. And this is, I think, the result of these mediation efforts. And the president wants to go there himself and meet the parties in person. So I think that shows that Turkey has a certain impact, right? Only this visit means a lot, I think.
So, you know, Kuwait has positioned itself as a mediator, but Kuwait also has certain responsibilities and interactions with the other GCC countries that perhaps Turkey might not. So is there a way that Turkey is maybe in a better position, perhaps because they don't have as many complications as Kuwait, or not necessarily, or the role's different?
I think let's be, honest. This whole crisis needs the help of all other also nations, not only Turkey. So it can only be solved with the involvement of the also other countries like the United States, some European countries, and Turkey is part of this whole process. So it's not just one country, but a team of countries who are mediating that will, I think, bring an end to this crisis.
That's a fair point. Mr. Ambassador, how do you see Turkey's role in this process?
Well, I think the visit is very important because Turkey is an important country in the region and playing a role that I think can help to find a solution for this crisis. And I think we shouldn't look at Turkey President's visit just only for solving this crisis. I think we have to look at behind of this visit, which is something more important. I think the GCC country, they should know that Turkey is having good relation with almost all the GCC countries, and they like to have the same relation with all of them. And we have to think that Turkey strategically is very important for our region, strategically, politically, economically, and Turkey, the partnership with Turkey, I think, can serve the interests of the whole GCC countries. We are welcoming this visit, which is very important, that President Erdogan, I think, coming to help. Besides, we have this initiative by Kuwait and the Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Sabah, which we think is very important, that this initiative is being supported by a lot of countries like Turkey and the United States and European countries. So this visit, I think, it's going to serve the interests of the whole region. In the future, we should build up in this visit to create a partnership with Turkey.
You talk about a partnership with Turkey. In fact, we've got some facts here to kind of put some numbers to what you're talking about. Now, Turkey's leading trade partners actually include Germany, the UK, and Iraq. And Turkey also has a multi-billion-dollar trade interest in the Gulf as well. So the Turkish Statistical Institute, that is, says there were nearly $14 billion worth of exports and imports from Saudi Arabia and the UAE just last year. That is 20 times more than the $700 million worth of annual trade with Qatar. Now, the Gulf crisis is likely to change that. Turkey has boosted exports to its allies since the blockade began 7 weeks ago now. Bilateral trade is expected to rise to $2 billion this year. Turkey and Saudi Arabia cooperate on defense as well, and more Turkish troops have been sent to its military base in Qatar, which eventually could host 1,000 troops. So yes, it does seem that Turkey is deeply entrenched in the Gulf. So Abdulaziz, I want to ask you, when you look at those ties that Turkey already has with all the countries in the GCC, particularly with Qatar, do you think that what has happened now is going to affect that relationship in a good or bad way?
Actually, if you see that Turkey and Iran are the main centers of powers in the whole region. Any instability in the region will affect Turkey and Iran badly, actually. Going back to statistics, actually UAE is the 7th export market for Turkey. Saudi Arabia is the 11th export market to Turkey. Egypt is the 13th export market to Turkey. Therefore, yes, it will have a huge impact on Turkey if this crisis really continue. Therefore, I mean, it's of the interest of Turkey, it's the interest of the even international community to solve this issue and to end this crisis in the region. I mean, Qatar will not be the only country that is impacted in the blockade or the Gulf crisis. Even the blockading countries will be really bleeding and paying a price for this if this continue. Therefore, the whole effort of everybody is required. However, I think still Kuwait is the official mediator in the Gulf crisis, and Turkey will play a role to facilitate.
That's actually a great distinction that you're making. No, you're right. Turkey has been very clear about not necessarily calling itself a mediator per se, because that role is what Kuwait has stepped up and said that they want to have, which is not to say they can't facilitate this in some way.
Exactly, because they have a very good relationship with Qatar, and they can leverage on this relationship, and they have strong ties with Saudi Arabia and UAE and the rest of the GCC countries. So they are in a position to facilitate the mediation of Kuwait.
Mr. Ambassador, I want to go back to some numbers again, and Abdulaziz alluded to this. So Qatar conducts $9.5 billion in trade annually with the countries that have put this blockade in place, and provides the UAE with a third of its natural gas. Who is this blockade hurting the most?
Well, I think the blockade is hurting everybody in the region, not only Qatar, because our region is integrated to each other. Any effect, any harm is in any country, it will harm everybody in the region. So this is something they should understand, and we understand it completely. So I believe we have to think of our future. We have achieved a lot of success and a lot of big projects in our region. We have to protect this project, and we have to go forward and for the future, looking for the benefit of our people, our nations, and the relation with Turkey. And this visit, I think, it can serve to have a partner like Turkey, which is very close to us. This is an Islamic country, and they have achieved a lot of success and a lot of progress in their political and economic system that we can learn and we can benefit. And I think this visit, it will serve the whole countries in the region, and they should think these countries are imposing the blockade in Qatar, that Turkey has trying to have a good relation with everybody in the same floor, and they like to distinguish from one country to another. And this is something very important. And the President Erdogan, he said it very clearly that the relation with the GCC countries is very important for Turkey. Yeah. So I think for a regional balance, for our benefit and for our future, we have to think about this visit and to pay a lot of attention to it.
Enes, let me ask you, President Erdogan specifically called out Saudi Arabia. Specifically, he said that the onus was on them to step up and fix this, called out King Salman by name. Do you agree with that? Do you think that will have an impact? That was a very direct thing to say.
Yes, I think Saudi Arabia has an important role here, and it's one of the the biggest economy there among these countries, and has a certain political and diplomatic weight. So by calling by the king, I think the president has made a point, because if Saudi Arabia decides and wants to solve the conflict, they can make a huge impact on the crisis. So I think he is right to do this. And at the same time, as the other speakers has mentioned, Turkey has a lot of trade interests in those countries, and Turkey wants to keep them. So although Turkey is supporting Qatar from the beginning on, and has a military base there, which was decided before this crisis started, Turkey has also many trade relations with other countries, and also wants to keep this separate. I mean, the trade and the politics, especially the political crisis, Turkey wants to keep this separate. And we have seen this in Turkish foreign policy in other crises that Turkey had with other countries. Like we had a political crisis with Israel after the Mavi Marmara incident, but this has not also impacted our trade relations much. So this is the foreign policy, the strategy of Turkey, that trying to keep these things, separate as much as possible. Although they do,
there is overlap.
They do influence each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. The Saudi news agency is actually reporting that Qataris who wish to perform Umrah can do so, can travel to Saudi Arabia, with the caveat being not on Qatar Airways. Abdulaziz, is that any type of concession to you?
Actually, I mean, this is just part of the very strange behavior that we have seen from the blockading countries. We have seen the political issues and tensions before, but reaching down to hurting people, hurting relationships, touching the social bond between families, affecting 12,000 families that overlapping between or among GCC countries. This is we have not seen before.
So do you think that that was, maybe it's tough for you to say, do you think that that was intentional, this type of personal effect, or is that something perhaps they didn't really think through when they put this?
And I think it's intentional. They are raising the bar. It's the game now. It's like the bone-breaking game. Who will scream first and who will just submit the concessions first?
Mr. Ambassador, have you seen any signs of a thaw yet to actually get everybody to the table?
Well, I think they should realize that our region is going through a lot of difficulties, and now what they accuse Qatar about, it's getting very clear to everybody that it's doesn't have any base, and they should realize also that the interests of this region and this people of our countries, we should work together to see how we can find a solution to this crisis. They couldn't have any alliance to be with them. They couldn't find any countries to support them, and all these accusation, it came false, and we heard about the cyber attack in our news agency. That was unfortunately Emirates, and our neighbor is behind it. So I think now it's time to sit down on the table with the initiative of Kuwait, which is, it's an initiative that they like to see. Stability and security is prevailing in our region, with the support of all our friends and allies in the world, in the United States and European countries. I think it's time now to sit in the table, and they should realize that Qatar won't allow any country to interfere in their internal affairs, because this is an issue that we cannot allow anybody to get in our internal affairs. This is a red line, and they realize that. And one of them is Al Jazeera, which we think Al Jazeera helped a lot to reduce the tension in Qatar, because it is a platform that everybody is respecting. And we are in Spain here. You cannot believe how much support we got from a lot of institutions and a lot of organizations and the government to see
Mr. Ambassador?
This is not allowed to
Mr. Ambassador,
yes.
if I can, for just a moment, you mentioned the allies of Qatar, and one of obviously the more prominent allies of Qatar is the United States. And after a lot of mixed signals when this all began, it seems now that that the message consistently from the U.S. is they want everyone to get to the table. And in fact, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson actually spoke out about this as recently as Friday. Let's listen to what he had to say.
I think we're satisfied with the effort they're putting forth. I think they also have indicated a willingness to sit with the four parties and negotiate, discuss the demands. I think they have indicated they think it's important that the sovereignty and dignity of all five countries be respected in those discussions. And so what I hope that four countries will consider as a sign of good faith, lifting this land blockade, which is really having the most, I think, negative effects on the Qatari people. And that would be a good sign if the four countries would do that. And I'm hopeful they'll consider that seriously.
And also, it's important to point out that the Emir of Qatar had a meeting with the head of Central Command as well. So the U.S. seems to have been fairly steady now. But Enes, I want to ask you, are there any takeaways from this with the U.S. in the sense that U.S. President Donald Trump clearly sided with Saudi Arabia from the beginning? right? And other officials in the U.S., including Rex Tillerson and people to that effect, have been very steadily either totally siding with Qatar or at the very least being mediators to say everybody get to the table. When all of this is said and done, what does that say about the U.S.'s role in something like this, or in the U.S., in the Middle East, that is?
I think, I mean, it's quite clear that the whole crisis is an artificial crisis, right? So it has no basis, as the Mr. Ambassador, I mean, said. And that's why the position of the United States was really important from very beginning on. And now they made clear that they want it to be solved. I think some issues has been solved already, and that's why that they are making this, the policy change, and that will have a huge impact. I think in this sense that the Turkey's position and Turkey's support has been important also, because our president had also some meetings with the President Trump, and this shows that that now we are approaching the end of this crisis, that the United States has changed its policy, its position, and that will has a huge impact on this crisis, because I think without, now the United States has this position, it is almost impossible for the Saudi Arabia and the others to carry on with this policy of blockade. And that's, I think, is quite important.
Abdulaziz, do you agree with what Enes said, that we're nearing the end of this, or do you think he's a bit optimistic?
I think it will take time. That the American position has not been consistent for some times. It's only lately that the White House has delegated Department of State to be in charge of the Gulf crisis. I'm not sure even of what you said, that now they are siding Qatar, but at least now they are saying that this accusation of terrorism is really not accurate. Qatar has signed an MOU with the United States to say that, okay, leave the terrorism aside, it's between us and Qatar. And lately they said that we are happy of the improvement and steps that been taken by Qatari government in terms of combating and dealing with terrorism, in terms of finance or any other subject. Now the demand of these blockading countries becomes really baseless, and they are now invited to sign the same MOU regarding the support for terrorism. Therefore, Qatar has nothing to hide. They put everything on the table regarding this topic, and they signed the MOU. And even our Minister of Foreign Affairs invited the blockaded country to sign the same thing.
Mr. Ambassador, you will have the final word on this. What will it take to get everybody to the table?
Well, I think we have to realize that, the GCC countries, they are achieved so many economic success. And we have to protect this thing, and this crisis is not serving anybody. And the accusation of Qatar of all these things, I think it's not now, no one believes in it. No, neither in the region nor in the other part of the world. So I think it's time now to realize that this crisis is not benefiting anybody, and we have to sit down and find a solution as soon as possible. And Qatar is open for a dialogue, like what His Highness said in his speech on Friday. And I think this is a big opportunity for our brothers and our friends in the region to understand Qatar is a country that would like to sort out this conflict and this dispute in a peaceful way and a negotiable manner. And we are ready to sit down, and the longer it will last, this conflict, I think the more complicated it will be complicated for everybody. So we have to realize, because it's affecting the social fiber of the societies in the Gulf, like what we have heard about. These families are
yes, sir.
Now disintegrated and affected by all this crisis. We should find solution for this as soon as possible. Otherwise, we will see this crisis getting more complicated.
And that will be the final word, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate it very much. Enes Bayrakli, Ambassador, Mohammed, Jaham, Abdulaziz al-Kuwari, and Abdulaziz al-Horr. And thank you all for watching as well. You can see the program again anytime if you go to our website. It's aljazeera.com. For further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. For me, Richelle, Carey, and the entire team, bye for now.